That night, I looked at him like I hadn't looked at a man in 20 years, my daughter's brother-in-law, and I kissed him first. I never imagined crossing that line. Never thought I'd feel that rush of desire again at 45. But sometimes life writes the most unexpected chapters when we're just trying to get through another empty day. It began 3 days earlier. Grace had called in a panic about pipes freezing at their lake house. "Mom, please. Just check on things while we're stuck in Denver. The storm's coming tonight." So there I was, driving up to my daughter's winter getaway as the sky darkened ominously above the pines. The wind picked up as I unlocked the door, sending dead leaves skittering across the porch like tiny messengers warning me to leave. I should have listened. The house stood silent and cold. I flipped on lights, turned up the thermostat, and checked the pipes in the basement. Everything seemed fine, just cold and empty. I texted Grace the all clear, then glanced at the weather report on my phone. The storm was intensifying. Roads would be dangerous soon. "Just stay the night, Mom," Grace texted back. "Guest rooms made up. We'll call in the morning." I wandered through rooms filled with memories of family gatherings I'd attended alone since David's death 4 years ago. My fingertips traced the smooth wooden banister as I climbed the stairs, remembering how my son-in-law had proudly shown me every detail when they bought the place. The house felt different in winter darkness, holding secrets in its shadows. The first knock came just as I was settling in with a book. 3 sharp raps that made me jump. Who would be out in this weather at this isolated house? Through the peephole, I saw him tall, broad-shouldered, and vaguely familiar. When I cracked the door, the wind nearly tore it from my hand. "Mrs. Morgan? I'm Nathan, Mark's brother. We met at Grace's wedding." Recognition dawned slowly. My son-in-law's younger brother, the architect who lived in Seattle, who danced with all the bridesmaids, who'd made me laugh during the reception dinner. Grace called, asked me to check on the house since I was already at my cabin down the road. He explained, snowflakes melting in his dark hair. "Didn't realize you'd be here." I stepped back, letting him in. "Just for tonight. The storm." He nodded, stomping snow from his boots. His cheeks were flushed from cold, and when he unzipped his jacket, I caught the scent of cedar and cold air. Something flickered in my chest. A sensation so long forgotten it took me a moment to recognize it as awareness. "Let me make some coffee," I offered, needing to occupy my hands. In the kitchen, I felt strangely self-conscious, aware of my faded jeans and oversized sweater, the reading glasses perched on my head, the fact that I hadn't bothered with makeup. Nathan leaned against the doorframe, watching me work. I could feel his eyes on my back as I reached for mugs in the cabinet. "Here, let me," he said, suddenly beside me. His arm brushed mine as he easily reached the shelf above my head. I stepped back quickly, but the kitchen was small, and we were still standing too close. The overhead light caught the silver threading his temples, the lines at the corners of his eyes. He was younger than me, but not young, maybe late 30s. Our fingers touched as he handed me the mug. Just a moment of contact, but it sent a current through me that I immediately tried to dismiss. "So you're house-sitting too?" Nathan asked, taking a seat at the island. I busied myself with the coffee maker. "Just overnight. You're staying nearby." "At my cabin about a mile down the shore. Been there a week already, working remotely." His voice was deep, with a resonance that seemed to fill the kitchen. I was going stir-crazy, glad for the company, even if it came with an excuse to check pipes. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows. Nathan glanced toward the sound. "Going to be a rough night." I set his coffee before him, careful not to let our hands touch again. The forecast said possible power outages. "Do you know where they keep candles, flashlights?" I nodded toward the pantry. Grace showed me once. We moved to the pantry together, the narrow space forcing us close as I pointed to upper shelves. Should be up there somewhere. Nathan reached up, his sweater lifting slightly, revealing a strip of skin above his jeans. I looked away, but not before noticing the lean muscle, the trail of dark hair. Heat rushed to my face as I stepped back, bumping against shelves. "Careful," he murmured, his hand steadying my elbow. His touch lingered longer than necessary, and when I looked up, his eyes held mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. I pulled away first. "We should check the firewood too." In the living room, Nathan knelt before the stone fireplace, arranging logs with practiced hands. I watched the movement of his shoulders beneath his sweater, the way the firelight played across his features as he coaxed flames to life. "Mark mentioned you lost your husband," he said quietly, still focused on the fire. "I'm sorry. 4 years ago. Cancer." I sat on the sofa, tucking my legs beneath me. "It gets easier, but the quiet never does." He nodded, remaining silent for a long moment. "Divorced 3 years myself. No kids." The quiet was the first thing I noticed too. The fire caught properly, sending warm light dancing across the room. Nathan settled in the armchair across from me, his long legs stretched toward the hearth. We sipped our coffee in comfortable silence, two people accustomed to being alone, now sharing this unexpected moment of shelter. When the lights flickered once, twice, then died, neither of us seemed surprised. "Perfect timing with that fire," I said, watching as the flames became our only illumination. Nathan moved to light candles I hadn't noticed him placing strategically around the room. In the golden glow, shadows softened the angles of his face. He looked younger, almost vulnerable. "Grace said there's an excellent bottle of red in the cellar for emergencies," he said with a half smile. "I'd say power outage in a blizzard qualifies." I found myself smiling back. "I'll get glasses." We met at the kitchen island, the wine bottle between us. Nathan poured, his hand steady and sure. When he handed me my glass, his fingers brushed mine intentionally this time, his eyes meeting mine over the rim as we both drank. The wine was rich and warming. I felt it spread through me, loosening something tightly coiled in my chest. "I remember you at the wedding," Nathan said suddenly. "You wore a blue dress. Sat alone at a table full of couples." My eyebrows rose. "You noticed that?" "I noticed you," he said simply, and took another sip. Back in the living room, Nathan added another log to the fire. The storm threw itself against the windows like a living thing, but inside was all warmth and flickering light. We sat closer now, both on the sofa, the bottle on the coffee table between us. "Tell me about Seattle," I said, tucking my feet beneath me. He spoke about his architectural firm, his restored craftsman house, kayaking on weekends. I watched his hands as he talked, strong, expressive hands that sketched shapes in the air. When he asked about my life, I surprised myself with my candor, sharing things I rarely voiced about my loneliness, my work as a literature professor, the strange limbo of being neither young nor old at 45. "Do you date?" he asked, refilling our glasses. "Occasionally. Nothing ever feels." I trailed off, searching for the word. "Real," he finished for me, and I nodded. The fire hissed and popped. Nathan set down his glass and moved to the bookshelves, running his fingers along spines. "Grace has good taste in books." I joined him, standing close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body. "This section is all Mark's thrillers." Nathan chuckled. He always did love those beach reads. He pulled out a leather-bound volume. "This doesn't look like Mark's style." Our hands touched as I took the book from him. "Poetry. Probably Grace's." He was standing very close now. I could see the slight cleft in his chin, the way his lashes cast shadows on his cheeks in the candlelight. When he spoke, his voice was lower, softer. "Read something." I opened the book randomly, my hands less steady than I would have liked. The poem was Pablo Neruda. The words about desire and hunger seemed to hang in the air between us as I read. When I finished, neither of us moved away. "Beautiful," he murmured, his eyes never leaving my face. I returned the book to the shelf, acutely aware of his presence just behind me. When I turned, he was closer than I expected. His hand came up slowly, giving me every chance to step away, but I remained still as his fingers brushed a strand of hair from my face. "Olivia," he said, just my name, a question in his voice. The grandfather clock in the hall chimed midnight. The sound seemed to break whatever spell had been building, and I stepped back, my heart hammering against my ribs. "It's late. We should probably." Nathan nodded, dropping his hand. "Of course. I'll bank the fire." I moved to the staircase, one hand on the banister. "The guest room is made up. There's another across the hall." "Thank you," he said, crouched by the fireplace, face half in shadow. "Good night, Olivia." I lay awake in the darkness, listening to the storm and the unfamiliar sounds of another person moving in the house. The floor creaked occasionally. Water ran in the bathroom. Then silence. Sleep eluded me. My mind replayed every moment of the evening, his hand steadying my elbow, the way he'd looked at me as I read the poem, the heat in his eyes when he'd brushed the hair from my face. I felt 17 again, pulse racing at the memory of the slightest touch. This was absurd. He was my son-in-law's brother, younger than me, a virtual stranger. Then why could I still feel the ghost of his fingers against my cheek? I got up, wrapping the quilt around my shoulders. Perhaps a glass of water would help. Or the last of the wine. The hallway was dark except for faint moonlight streaming through a window at the end, the storm having momentarily calmed. I walked quietly, not wanting to wake Nathan, but when I reached the stairs, he was there, sitting on the top step, staring out the window. He turned at my approach, moonlight silvering his profile. "Couldn't sleep either?" he asked softly. I shook my head, clutching the quilt tighter. "Too quiet? Or not quiet enough?" "I'm not sure." He smiled slightly. "Both, maybe." He patted the step beside him. "Join me." I hesitated, then sat, leaving a careful space between us. The quilt slipped from one shoulder. Nathan reached over, drawing it back up, his fingers lingering on the fabric, just brushing my collarbone. The touch sent a shiver through me that had nothing to do with cold. "Mark told me once how much Grace admires you," he said quietly. "How you rebuilt your life after your husband died. How you never let her see how hard it was." I looked down at my hands. She needed to believe I was okay. "And are you?" "Okay." The question hung between us, more intimate than anything that had come before. I raised my eyes to his, finding them intent on mine, searching. "Most days," I answered truthfully. "Tonight, I'm not sure what I am." He shifted closer, the space between us narrowing. "When I saw you through the window earlier, for a moment I thought, I don't know what I thought, but I'm glad you're here." His hand found mine atop the quilt, our fingers intertwining slowly, deliberately. My pulse thrummed in my ears as his thumb traced circles on my palm. "This is," I began. "Unexpected," he finished. "Complicated," I countered. His smile was barely visible in the darkness. That too. Outside, snow fell in thick curtains, blanketing the world in silence. Inside, the house held its breath as Nathan leaned closer, his free hand coming up to cradle my face. I had every opportunity to pull away, to return to my room, to reset boundaries that shouldn't be crossed. Instead, I closed the distance between us. The first kiss was tentative, questioning. The second was not. His arms wrapped around me as the quilt fell forgotten to the step below. My hands found their way into his hair, across the broad plains of his back. He tasted of wine and would smoke, and something uniquely himself that made me hunger for more. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against mine, our noses touching. "I've wanted to do that since I saw you on the porch," he whispered. "I've wanted you to," I admitted, surprised by my own boldness. His hands traced the contours of my face as if memorizing every detail. "Tell me if I'm moving too fast." In answer, I kissed him again, feeling years of loneliness dissolve in the heat between us. His hands slipped beneath my sweater, tracing paths of fire along my skin. I shivered at his touch, arching closer. "Not here," I whispered against his mouth. "The guest room." We rose together, hands still intertwined, and moved down the hallway. At the doorway, Nathan paused, his expression suddenly serious. "Are you sure about this?" I reached up, tracing the outline of his lips with my fingertips. "I've been living in grayscale for 4 years. Tonight I see color again." "Yes, I'm sure." The room was cold, but we barely noticed, lost in the heat we generated between us. Clothes were discarded slowly, each new expanse of skin explored with reverent hands, appreciative murmurs. Nathan's body was all lean muscle and unexpected softness, both familiar and thrillingly new. When he looked at me, really looked, taking in the evidence of my 45 years without hesitation, I felt beautiful in a way I hadn't in decades. "You're stunning," he breathed, his hands moving over me with both desire and tenderness. What followed was a slow discovery of each other. Where David and I had developed the comfortable rhythms of a long marriage, this was different, exhilarating in its newness, heightened by the knowledge that it might never happen again. Nathan was attentive, patient, finding places that made me gasp, responding with pleasure to my touch. We took our time drawing out each sensation, building toward a crescendo that left us both trembling. Afterward, we lay tangled together, my head on his chest, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on my back. The storm continued outside, but in here we had created our own sanctuary of warmth. "I don't normally do this," I whispered into the darkness. His chest rumbled with gentle laughter. "I should hope not. House-sitting would get very complicated." I smiled against his skin. "You know what I mean." His arms tightened around me. "I know. Me neither." He pressed a kiss to my forehead. "But I'm glad we did." In the pale hours before dawn, we talked in whispers, sharing secrets meant for the dark. He told me about his failed marriage, his plans to start his own firm. I spoke of my fears of growing old alone, of being forgotten. We dozed and woke and reached for each other again, making the most of hours that seemed borrowed from another life altogether. When morning came, bringing weak sunlight through a break in the clouds, reality began seeping back. Nathan's phone chirped, cell service restored. My own buzzed with a text from Grace, checking if everything was okay. We dressed slowly, stealing glances, shy now in daylight. The power remained out, but the storm had passed, leaving a transformed landscape of pristine white outside the windows. In the kitchen, Nathan made coffee on the gas stove while I responded to Grace. Yes, everything was fine. The power was out, but the house was secure. I'd be leaving soon. "What will you tell them?" Nathan asked, setting a steaming mug before me. "About the house? That everything's fine. About us," he clarified, leaning against the counter. "If there isn't us to tell about." The question took me by surprise. I had assumed this was just one extraordinary night, a beautiful aberration. "I don't know," I admitted. "Is there an US?" He crossed to where I sat, taking my hands in his. "I'd like there to be. I know it's complicated, family dynamics, distance, timing. But last night wasn't just." He searched for words. "Opportunity? Loneliness?" I suggested. "Connection," he said firmly. "Real connection. Those don't happen every day." I looked down at our joined hands. Seattle is a long way from Boston. Planes exist. So do architectural projects on the East Coast. His thumb brushed my knuckles. I'm not asking for promises. Just possibility. The weight of potential futures hung between us. I thought of my quiet apartment, my ordered life. Then I thought of the way he had looked at me in candlelight, how alive I had felt in his arms. Possibility, I repeated, meeting his gaze. I think I can manage that. His smile was like sunrise. He leaned down, kissing me with a tenderness that held promise. Later, as I prepared to leave, Nathan helped carry my overnight bag to the car. The world sparkled around us, ice crystals hanging from every branch. I'll be in Boston next month, he said, closing my car door. Preliminary meetings for a potential project. What a coincidence, I replied, unable to stop smiling. He leaned through the window for one last kiss. I'll call you tonight. As I drove down the snow-covered lane, I watched him grow smaller in my rearview mirror. Part of me wondered if last night had been real, if the connection we'd felt would survive distance and daylight and the complications of family. But as I reached the main road, my phone buzzed with a text. Already missing you. Drive safe. I smiled, turning toward home. Sometimes the most unexpected nights lead to the most unexpected beginnings, and I was ready finally to begin again.